My, good, you hear? I am so excited. Guess what? I hope this isn't about your podcast again. Why, did you finally listen to it?
Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. The Groomer Next Door production. You're listening to BYOTP Radio. Coming up next, the Groomer Next Door. The Groomer Next Door podcast.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hello, Pups and Kittens, and welcome to a jumbo-sized edition of the Groomer Next Door. I'm your host, Chris Green, and unfortunately not sitting next to me this week isn't going to be Sarah. She is currently helping Phelps County Animal Welfare League put together the annual Spay Getty Dinner right here in Rolla. So she will not be able to join us this week, but we wish her all the best, and as soon as we're done recording this podcast, we will also be over there as well. And when I say we, I mean Claire and I. Well, this week we are very fortunate to have Senator Dan Brown from Missouri joining us on the podcast. He is actually somebody I have been wanting to have on the podcast since I started doing this, so only 165 episodes, and I was able to accomplish a goal that has been since episode 1. Well, let's dive into our fact of the week. Dogs can smell about 1,000 times better than humans. While humans have 5 million smell detecting cells, dogs have more than 220 million. The part of the brain that interprets smell is also 4 times larger in dogs than in humans. Boy, that would be great to be able to smell everything from far away, but boy, it would not work out so well in the truck stop bathroom. Well, with that said, let's dive into the Weekly Roundup.
The Weekly Roundup, yeehaw.
Alright, this week on our Weekly Roundup, I'm going to make it really quick because Senator Dan Brown will be joining us in just a minute. But what we said after the end of last week's podcast was we knew that there was the possibility of a surrender of a pit bull that was right here in Rolla at a trailer park that was going to be demolished. Well, we did get that notification, came in on Sunday, and so we went out to the location and we picked up this wonderful American pit bull. She had a couple issues. One was the possibility of male aggression. The other was she had suffered some abuse. And it turned out to have E. coli issues because the water was contaminated. Well, we were very fortunate. She turned out to be great. We've been working with her ever since. Went over subsequently to Doc Brown's office, Senator Brown, and picked up some medicine from his office and have been treating her. She is doing much better. She is a loving sweetheart, and it's a little sad because she had never slept on a bed before this past week, or inside for that matter. Now she has a very nice bed, and she's right next to me as I'm saying this. And she's just absolutely a love bug. Great with kids. Even though she had faced quite a lot of adversity over the last 2 years of her life, she is going to make some family amazingly happy. So I'm glad and happy to report that all is going well, really well with her and her transition to us. And we are currently looking for a foster, well, more of a transport to rescue than anything else. We can foster until we find it. And that will be what's going to happen. So that will be right now where we are. We'll keep you up on it. Follow us on our Facebook page for photos, videos, and up-to-date stories on her. And now we actually have, again, and I'm kind of shocked to say this, another dog food recall.
Dog food recall alert.
All right, we have a lot to go over this week in dog food recall. February 13th, Blue Buffalo Company has issued a voluntary recall for specific lots of Blue Buffalo Homestyle Recipe Healthy Weight due to possible aluminum metal contamination. In summary, the recalled product includes the Homestyle Recipe Healthy Weight Chicken Dinner and Garden Vegetable. It's the 12.5-ounce cans, and you can check out the UPC numbers and sell-by dates on the description. And now we also have an update on another case that is actually really shocking. February 17th, the update came up. The Food and Drug Administration is advising pet owners not to feed their dogs certain lots of Avenger's hunk of beef or against the grain-free pulled beef with gravy canned dog food after they were found to contain pentobarbital. Pentobarbital is a drug that's used for animals in euthanasia and should not be found in dog or any kind of pet food. The drug's presence in these products are detected by the FDA's renders, and it's, of course, not to be done, should not have happened. The Food Advisory has previously announced, as of, I think it was a week ago, we actually talked about this, they had done it. There's a great deal about this from the FDA that I will also put on this week's show descriptions for you to read. And if you have any of these products, please stop giving them to your loved ones. Their little furry friends do not need to have this in their diet. It will hurt them severely. And that concludes this week's edition of Dog Food Recall.
Hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
This week, I'm actually getting to fulfill a very long desire for me since I've been doing this podcast to have Senator Dan Brown. And not only are you a senator, you're a veterinarian doctor. I mean, my gosh, you have overachieved in so many ways, and it is an honor, seriously an honor to have you on the podcast this week.
Well, it's an honor to be on the podcast, and we strive in both the hats that we wear of meeting and interacting with folks, and kind of getting some of our, I guess, philosophies and ideas out, and listening to other people's ideas and philosophies.
And I'm going to. And later on in my questionnaire, I have a main thing, one of these internal desires that I will be bringing up to you, and it's something that I'd love to kick around with you. But let's start off. What inspired you? Let's go way back 30 years. What inspired you to become a veterinarian?
Well, as I said, you may hear a dog barking. And this is a noisy little guy, but you'll have to go back further than that, because I've been in Rolla as a veterinarian for this year in May will be 40 years.
Wow!
So I've been practicing a while, and but about third grade, I grew up on a dairy farm, and we had a very good veterinarian that did a lot of work for us. Dairy cattle require more intense care than beef cattle do, and so you interact more with the veterinarian, and he was a role model for me, and I really determined early on this is what I wanted to do, and kind of what I set my sights on, and was fortunate enough to get accepted to veterinary school and be able to graduate, and man, I've done this 40 years and never had to go to work a day in my life.
I will agree with you on that. Being able to work with animals is not a job. It is a luxury.
No. It is.
And it's nice to know that you had that inspiration and almost a mentor to look towards at such a young age. You know, I look at my daughter's second grade right now, so she was just a year younger than you. To have that opportunity, that's an amazing feat to have.
Yes, it was, and the gentleman that, in other words, was my mentor and someone that I really looked up to, Dr. Keeney. is actually still alive. He's about 90 years old now, and he practiced for many, many years in Houston, Missouri, which is where I went to high school. And I get to see him on occasion, and I always thank him every time I see him.
So he knows that you were the inspiration. He was the inspiration for you.
Yep.
Nice.
Absolutely. I've said that publicly many times, that, outside my parents, he probably had and my grandparents, he had more influence on my life than probably anyone else in the world.
That's amazing. That really is. And so rewarding to know. Just a simple veterinarian. I mean, I'm sure, and I'm just speaking from what I see and what I know of you, I'm sure that you've inspired a great deal of people. Just locally, I know from what I've heard from everybody else and what I know from you, you're an inspiration in itself. So I'm pretty sure people are, whether they're, just 20, 15, 30, 40, I'm sure that you have touched them and inspired them to do bigger and better things. So it's good to see you passing it on.
Man, we sure try, and we have a lot of high school age kids and college kids that's worked here over the years, and some of them have gone on to become veterinarians, and some of them have decided that they want to go on the human side. And we've had a lot of kids that's become vet techs over the years. So I've always encouraged anyone that works for me to continue their education, further their education, because I'm a big believer in education and what it can do for you and your family. Mm-hmm. And plus, it's just kind of neat to get to learn new and exciting things.
I agree. I mean, we can never stop learning. On a daily basis, I couldn't tell you how much I read. And it's funny, when you're a kid, you almost kind of overlook it. You think, oh, I know everything. But man, when you become an adult, you start to realize I need to continue to feed my brain. And I've seen the kids that are in your clinic. I mean, I know from even your family, you guys are all very well stride for wanting to actually further education, and you are just leading by example. Your family alone, I've seen it. I'm always amazed to watch and to see it. It's very inspirational, especially as a young parent. I look at my daughter and I go, now that's what I model myself as a parent and hope my daughter turns out to be like.
Well, my grandson sometime might think I'm a little tough on them. We also run a farming operation. My son does most of that now, and my grandsons and grandchildren are very involved in that. And so we expect a lot of them. We give them a lot of responsibilities, and try to teach them good animal husbandry, whether it's their dog or it's the cow or one of the horses. So we're pretty tough on them, but so far they've not rebelled. They've stuck with me.
I feel a little bit fortunate to be able to know your daughter-in-law and to get to, in a sense, learn a little bit of how to be a model parent and to see what you guys are like. I mean, it is, honestly, I can say I don't think you guys have to be too difficult, because your grandkids, from what I see, they're so well adjusted, and I don't want to continue with it, because I know public life and being in Senate and in your life, you really try to keep everything as private as possible. But I want to paint the picture. I see it, and I'm amazed by it. It's an amazing.
Yeah, Laura's my daughter-in-law. I'm very fortunate. I have two children, and my son Justin, and then his wife Laura, that through teaching. And then I have my daughter Dent, Cheryl, and Brad Cheryl, that have made right here in town. And I've always told people that I didn't lose a son or a daughter. I gained another daughter, and I gained another son. And so we're fortunate that our family all lives close. Mm-hmm. And that we do a lot of things as a family. And everybody's, if I'm in here on an emergency and I need help, I could call Laura, I could call Brad, I could call anybody in the family, and they're going to be here and help me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool.
It's amazing. It really is. It's a very, very tight family, and from what I see, and it's just, I commend you on that. I really do. I commend all of you. All of you. I mean, whether it's your grandkids, your son, all of you guys. You guys are all just amazing. Now, in the medical field, there's a term, and you've heard this before, they can't all graduate top of their class. But that's not the case for you. What was it like graduating summa cum laude with your doctorate of veterinary medicine? What was that like?
Well, I think part of that comes from the fact that I never knew exactly how much you had to do to get a C. I was always a little scared. and so I probably overstudied a lot, but I also learned a lot by doing that. And, a lot of my professors assumed that I would stay in academia. That's what most people that are fortunate that make good grades do. And that really wasn't my goal. I really wanted to be in private practice. I wanted to be a good practitioner and offer a really good service at a price that people could afford. With some of the increased costs of Obamacare, it's also reflected in our industry. A lot of our generic drugs that have gone up 1,700 to 3,200% over the last 5 years, and that does reflect poorly for my profession and being able to treat my patients, because for the most part, there's not much insurance in veterinary medicine. And honestly, at my age, I hope there is not a lot of insurance, because when you get the third-party payer system going, then it's no longer between you and the owner and that client, which in patient, which is a dog or a cat or a horse or whatever it may be at the time. It kind of takes decision-making away, and that typically does not lead to good medicine. So I'm thankful that you can bring your dog in, and we look at a set of clinical signs, blood work if we need to go there, and then you and I can make a decision on the best course of treatment and therapy for that individual. And in human medicine, oftentimes you get the insurance party or you get the government involved, and it makes those decisions much more difficult, and it kind of puts someone between you and the doctor. And I just hope to God veterinary medicine doesn't go down that road. It takes so much away from, you spend more time doing paperwork and satisfying those needs than you do being with the patient. And the whole thing is being with the patient.
Right. And it doesn't matter if they have 2 or 4 legs.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I am hoping, and this is it's kind of a weird thing in this podcast. We really don't have a political view, because obviously dogs and cats don't have it. But this episode we will. And it'll be interesting, to go through different things, because honestly, it is a way of life, and the people that are listening to this episode, well, they're affected by it. And so this is a good open dialogue for it. And you don't really think Obamacare is affecting, even though I guess you could, but you don't really think Obamacare has anything to do with veterinarian, but Obamacare has everything to do with the prescription drugs area. That seems to be where it really centers around. I mean, they're the ones who are getting rich, nobody else.
Right.
And you hit that.
And honestly, Obamacare was an attempt to address an out-of-control industry that costs were driving a lot of people to bankruptcy. And the one thing that I think we should have paid more attention to is a big pharma and keeping them in control, not giving them as much leeway as they have. Yet I'm a free market guy. But at the same time, when you got a third-party payer system in place, that tends to get abused, and So, and politically speaking, I mean, I may have a different view than some, but I'll guarantee you, regardless of your view, and you may be exactly 180 from me, when I go to the Capitol and you have an issue, I'm going to work as hard for you as I do anyone. Mm-hmm. And we've had the opportunity to do that. The people that, after the fact may say, I sure didn't vote for you. I don't agree with what you say, but appreciate the help you give me. And so that makes it kind of worthwhile,
You seem like, and again, I'm kind of in a middle ground here, but you seem like you can easily work with anybody. You're not going to be drawn to a political party, and that bipartisan is what's important.
Right. Well, when you walk in that Capitol, after you go through the election process and the political thing and all that, there's 175 to 200,000 people in the 16th Senatorial District. I represent every one of them, mm-hmm. as well as everyone in the state of Missouri. So I may have some bias that shows through at times with legislation that I file. But at the end of the day, the budgets that we try to develop and create for the state of Missouri affect everyone. And anyone that is involved in politics, and I don't consider myself a seasoned politician, hope I never looked at that way, but it affects everyone. And, last night I was watching news out of St. Louis and the state of Illinois, and we've been criticized sometimes as we should have expanded a few things, we should have done things a little more differently. The state of Illinois right now has a budget deficit of $11 billion, and their state insurance is getting to the point they're not paying anyone. And there was a particular story of a lady who has a baby that has to be on oxygen 24/7, and they showed up with police to take the oxygen machine, and the baby would have died, and unfortunately they were able to talk him down off that. But we have problems in Missouri, but we do have a balanced budget amendment, and I'm thankful that we do that. We live within our means, and we try to do that as best we can. And like I say, I represent everyone in the 16th Senatorial District, and as chairman of appropriations and writing a budget for the state of Missouri, I ultimately represent everyone in the state of Missouri. And we're not all the same color. We're not all of the same political views. So at some point we gotta get to a compromise point that everyone can live with one another, or it becomes total chaos.
Exactly. That's exactly it. I mean, I think that we're in a nation right now that everybody is drawn to what political party are you for. If you're on this party, there's kind of this divide that I never really have seen it, and I'm kind of a little bit questioning to it, and whether it's right or wrong that's an opinion. But I look at it and I'm thinking to myself, does it really matter what party you want to represent? Doesn't it matter that we actually come together and fix the problems? Every state has them, and some have worse problems than others. Some have the deficit problems that are just, I look at where I grew up in California. Look at the debt that's there.
Oh, it's a mess.
It's crazy. I mean, instead of worrying about certain issues that really don't affect you, let's worry about getting the deficit, getting people back to work. These are the big things I look at. And then, we have the issues, and I try to be the voice for the animal side, and I'm in the perfect state for it, because we have plenty of these issues. So
we do, and I tell you, the animals keep the same. I'm so thankful that, some people get elected and they don't do their job no more. If I didn't have the animals to come home to Thursday night late and be in here Friday morning, I would probably be a blithering idiot. And maybe some people think I already am pretty quick, but you kind of can turn off a lot of the Jeff City stuff when you get here, and you're dealing with a whole new set of circumstances. And And I've been very fortunate, I guess, to be lucky on being able to come up with ways to keep some of these creatures going a while, and a long time in some instances, and boy, that's pretty fulfilling, as well as being able to help someone that's on the ropes themselves.
Oh, agreed. I mean, you probably know about this. You may or may not. I'm not sure. It's both Sarah and I she's the president now of Phelps County Animal Welfare League. I've been a volunteer for 3 years now. And, we unfortunately have the luxury and tapped with the task of a lot of unfortunate situations that come by.
Right.
And it's difficult, Sometimes you find we've had the situation where there was a cat at the animal shelter. It was pretty much there was nothing we could do. We wanted to go forward, help this animal, but it was terminal. It would have been harder to keep it alive, and that's a hard judgment. And you face that judgment on a constant basis and tell pet owners that, hey, unfortunately, your friend isn't going to make it. That is hard. That is something that I would think, how you do it sometimes.
It's a hard part of the job, and I think as you get older, you probably take it even more seriously than you did as a youngster. I am thankful that we do have the euthanasia option in animal medicine. Having lost both my parents and my wife losing both of her parents, one recently, sometimes I think we treat end-of-life situations much better than we do in humans oftentimes. And I realize that's a different level of, dealing with this. But, and I never tell someone what they should do with their own animal, but I will give them some of the options, and sometimes letting it proceed to the natural course is probably much more painful for that animal and the family than to do it humanely. And so I think every veterinarian struggles with that. There's some things that, and you have to realize, when I started veterinary practice, most everyone was either involved in farming operations, livestock operations in one way or another, or maybe one generation removed from the farm. And they had a probably better understanding of life, seeing calves born, and death, seeing things die untimely, than what we see today, that some people have maybe never even been to a farm, or they've never seen anything die, or faced with that decision. So you have to handle those situations much more carefully and cautiously and sensibly than maybe you did 40 years ago. And yet I still remain thankful that is an option, because I've had some animals that, I tell people a lot of times, you're going to know when it's time. They're going to tell you with their eyes. I can't tell you exactly when this happens, but many, many, many times over the last 40 years, I've had someone come back, after we determine we're probably dealing with a terminal event, but the animal's still doing relatively well. And they come in and say, you're right, it's time today. They told me this morning. And so it does happen, but it isn't easy. And I try to dwell and deal more with the new puppies that come in every day. I saw a new one this morning, and they're full of energy. They're into all kinds of things, and we know they're not going to live as long as we do in most situations. But at the same time, you sure get a lot of years of love and a lot of rewards out of that relationship. That's a pretty big deal.
I completely agree with you. I mean, when you look at the puppies that come in, we get them all the time and as well, and you see them and you take a step back and you just sit down and you play with them and you enjoy it, and as long as nothing horrible comes around, you're gonna get to see these little ones for you've got some years to watch them and see them progress, and it is nice. And even if you have a puppy, it is just so much fun just to see or a kitten. It's almost like it's the same as a child. You just get that enjoyment.
It's just like a newborn baby. Yep. It's a definition of innocence.
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah. Now, what are some, going into the political reign here, what are some of the pet-related laws that are causing issues right now in Missouri?
Well, when you deal with pet laws, there are some folks that really think you should go way a lot further. There's some folks that think you've gone way too far already. Now, Missouri is a state that has, in my opinion, very weak laws related to pet issues statewide. However, it's left on the local level. Municipalities can supersede state law, and they do often in many situations. Something as simple as rabies vaccine. I and a number of people have worked for many, many years to try to pass at least a base law. So if there is a bite case and we don't have any history of any vaccinations, depending on where the bite is at on the body, you can never rule out rabies. Mm-hmm. And it's something that's very serious. If you have to go through the prevention of rabies, and we would like to see a statewide law that gives law enforcement a little better authority to act to either confine these animals or euthanize, because unfortunately right now the only way you can test for rabies is with brain tissue, which means that's going to be a post-mortem after death issue. And I think if there were a little stronger rabies laws, probably more people would adhere to it, because in Missouri our pets have pretty close contact with the wildlife, because we're not a heavy populated state, and there's squirrels, there's rabbits, there's raccoons, there's possums, there's all kinds of creatures in and out of our yards and around even our homes that they get exposure, and so we're always concerned. We want people to be able to, some municipalities go very far with their pet laws, to the point that some people, they'll say how many pets you can have in your house. It's not gone quite that far in a lot of areas, but some people think that's too much. Others think it ought to be more onerous. So it's a very difficult subject. There's some pretty good laws relating to livestock and how they're handled and whether or not they're being fed properly, and there's a good source of clean, fresh water. These kind of things that may come up, and sometimes people do get turned in to authorities if they're not taking care of their livestock or their pets properly, and sometimes those are found in a court of law to be well-founded accusations, and sometimes they're not. There's as with any court case, there's usually two sides of the issue, and so you struggle with how far do you go without infringing upon people's rights.
Right, and again, I'm pretty new to Missouri. I've only been here 7 years, but I have seen a great deal of progress. You took Senate in 2010, which is about the time that the big pet laws started to really make their way through. 2011 is when they passed them, and then 2012 there had been some amendments because of too strict, not strict enough, and kind of adjustment period. But throughout that process, there has been a great deal of education, which, again, I wasn't here prior to 2010, but it seemed like the education, whether it was rural, big city, they all kind of worked the same. People started to become more informed, more educated on their pets, and they started to treat them a little bit more like family. Now the puppy mills, obviously, they decreased, I would say, by statistic, they decreased astronomically. Obviously not completely gone, which leads me into the next portion now. Obviously you had nothing to do with this. This is Governor Greydon, and I'm not, I'm just more or less in the curiosity mode. How does his recent budget cut of the $433,000 from the animal care facilities affect Missouri? And second part of that question is do you know approximately how much is allocated per year to the program?
Yeah, I put about $5 million in the budget for inspectors and upgrade being able to do timely inspections. Mm-hmm. That portion of the Division of Animal Health, the Division of Animal Health, Missouri is one of the states that does have a state veterinary. Mm-hmm. And the Division of Animal Health comes under the Department of Agriculture. Mm-hmm. And they've always had a good working relationship. And I put a fair amount of money in the budget for kennel inspections and education. Mm-hmm. And the cut of $433,000 should not affect our ability to make the inspections.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is we went from about 1,800 breeding facilities in Missouri to about 800 breeding facilities in Missouri. So obviously you don't need quite as much personnel to do the job. And most of the people that are still in the breeding business are pretty upstanding. They have really upgraded. They've had to upgrade their facilities. They know that there's going to be inspections pretty timely, that there hadn't been because there weren't enough inspectors and there wasn't enough manpower. And, laws are only as good as you can enforce them. Mm-hmm. You can pass all kinds of laws, but if the money's not there to enforce or take them to court, then the law doesn't mean much.
Right.
And that happens both on laws that you and I live by as well as laws that we raise or care for animals. So, as you said early on, some of the regulations that may have been going too far, at least it got the discussion going, mm-hmm. and it made a lot of difference. I think that most breeders that would be thinking of getting in the business in Missouri today know that they have to be licensed, they have to be inspected, they have to have a veterinarian on staff, or at least access to veterinary care. You probably aren't going to see that kind of fly-by-night type things that we had saw it one time in Missouri. And a lot of people don't understand, not all animal breeders are bad breeders.
Right.
We have many that really are interested in increasing genetics. And I'll be, in my opinion, the designer breeds that we have now, which are, in effect, what we would have called 30 years ago as crossbred or met, has been a good thing for animal medicine because when you crossbreed, you increase hybrid vigor, and that eliminates a lot of close breeding health issues. And we have a little dog that's a Bichon Shih Tzu cross, and eliminated a lot of problems that both breeds had, and it's been a great pet. And And that was by a breeder down in southwest Missouri. Nice facility, and I think that one thing that I had a lot of questions as a veterinarian when we were having some of these discussions. I traveled around the state a lot, talking to different groups, and I think one of the back history that people don't understand: how did Missouri get so many dog breeders, and did we have a really weak system? We didn't have such a weak system, but there had been a lot of money cut out of the Division of Animal Health, and we had very few people there. So the inspections weren't being done timely. And you have to realize at one time, Missouri was the feeder pig capital of the world. And we raised lots and lots of feeder pigs. And the buildings that were used to raise feeder pigs are heat, cooled, and climatically controlled. Well, all of a sudden, the feeder pig industry was not very profitable, and a lot of people went out of business. So you had a lot of farmers' wives that all of a sudden had spent most of their day in the farrowing house, tending to the little piglets and doing all the stuff that you do when you're getting them up to feeder pig age, didn't have a job no more. And the kids were growing up and gone away from home. And so different groups kind of targeted Missouri, and they had a perfect facility with some modifications and cages to raise pets because it was climatically controlled. There'd been a lot of money put into this thing, good water system, and so a lot of people got into the dog breeding business because it was pretty lucrative early on. And as those folks aged out and were replaced in the facility, and they did a very good job because these women and men were used to spending a lot of time in the farrowing house taking care of piglets. So taking care of puppies was really fun. It wasn't like work no more. And as they kind of aged out and those facilities got sold off, and we kind of got some of the more shady characters involved, I guess I should say. But that was one of the reasons that Missouri became a large number of pet breeders, because we had a kind of built-in infrastructure at one time, and most of those facilities are aging out. And they've been in production a long time, both in the feeder pig business and gone through the dog thing, and it's not as lucrative of a business as it used to be. You lost those people that were probably really good animal husbandry folks, and the replacements weren't as good, and it was time to tighten up the regulations. So that's a little back history, a little factoid that probably nobody wants to hear.
I'm sitting here enjoying every bit of it because I did not know that. So, it is quite interesting to me. I do know that in this area, we have a great deal of dog breeders, licensed dog breeders. And between here and Springfield, we're one of the larger spots, and it's very well regulated, and not only that, but very high quality, and that's something that I found out. So it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
It turned out being better quality animals.
Yeah,
that were being raised and fed better. Preventive medicine was better. So with change, there's always resistance.
Yes.
But usually, if you use some common sense, it turns out being better.
And that's the thing. It's, again, back to the education. That's what the main thing is. I look at it, I liked how the USDA operates. I've been able to see it through, the option of being next to a kennel, so I get to see how they come in, how the USDA comes in, they regulate. I like that. And that was my biggest concern, because I wasn't sure exactly what the actual allocated amount was. I wasn't sure if it was 5 or 6 million. So I was a little concerned, and I think a lot of people were a little concerned by the governor's decision. But only that I always worry about, and I'm not in your seat, so I don't really see it from a lot of different angles, except for right here, and that is, I worry that the budget cut could send a message to Missouri that it's no longer going to be watching for these puppy mills, and even possibly revert back to 2010. But that's from my perspective, and I don't know if that's accurate. And since you're in that spot, is that a concern, or is this completely something we should not be worried too much about?
Well, I think with the decrease in the number of breeders and the ramp up in the number of inspectors, it's probably not going. I think that is a number that the department could have offered up as a scale back. That we can start looking at some other areas. If we start seeing a big increase in the number of kennels, then that will be ramped back up. Okay. And hopefully the cuts that you see in the budget related to animals and related to humans for all that, and education is rather short-lived. Our revenues for Missouri are trending upward, which we're thankful for and we pray for, because as appropriators of taxpayer dollars, you like to be able to fund things that people expect to be funded at a level that is acceptable, and we, in the last few years, has been kind of tight to do that. So, from our perspective, we get a lot of reports, we get a lot of information, daily, weekly, monthly. Things are looking a little bit better. But I do think the Division of Animal Health has the ability to utilize inspectors from other areas if they feel short. I don't think they're short. I think they're pretty good, and is probably a cut that I would have done something probably pretty close to that myself had the governor not. I think that's pretty much an agreement within the department and the governor's office. I think we're okay, in other words. I don't think this one's going to hurt.
That one makes me feel really, really more at ease, because it was a concern I had, and I've had this discussion a couple times. I don't know if I've actually had it on the podcast. I think it was more off podcast with different people, local and around Missouri. It was a concern, and one thing that it kind of ties into it that really does worry me, and again, it's kind of looking at the whole picture, are dog auctions, which have been a big issue in Missouri. Now, is this still an issue? Or because what it was doing, and for people who don't know, the dog auctions were kind of supplying puppy mills. And I'm not sure if this has decreased over the 2011 laws that have kind of worked its way through. Has it decreased? Is it something that's still concerned? How is that working out?
From the standpoint of Dan Brown, the veterinarian, Dan Brown, citizen, I don't see near as many of those advertised. That got to be a big business in Missouri, and we were actually seeing dogs coming direct flights from Russia to Missouri just to be sold at dog auctions. These were not Missouri breeders. And as with any auction, I don't care if it's a cattle auction, if it's a farm auction or an antique auction, a state auction, there's really good people and there's some really bad people. And so some of the dog auctions, it was kind of an outlet for older dogs that were probably not producing many puppies anymore, and a way for them to get rid of them. And that's bad. And so I was almost shocked the other day. Somewhere I saw that there was going to be a small animal auction, and I hadn't seen one of those advertised in a long, long time. So by really tightening up on these, because we were getting some of these foreign dogs that had some diseases that were just burning through these kennels that we had never seen before. And some of these dogs then going from a Missouri auction, appearing to be a Missouri dog, ends up in California with some god-awful problem, and there was no way to trace these things back to where they had originated from. So that got shut down real quick nationally, and both on the Missouri scene. Maybe it's still going on, but it's certainly to a lesser degree, and they feel like they've done great strides in shutting that down. So I'm not seeing many dog auctions out there anymore. It's not a very good way for them to move puppies or litters or, breeding females. They required more testing of those breeding females and more history, a lot more honesty in the process, and that's shut that down to a low level. I'm not going to say it's not still occurring, but I don't think that's something you could very well black market. If you're going to get people there, you're going to have to advertise, and they're not advertising very much anymore. And I never did really participate in a small animal auction. I would not want to participate in that because I don't think you could have a very good inspection process unless you were there on premises 3 days prior to look at them.
Right. Well, I mean, at least it's not a major thing. Because I know even as short as just a couple years ago, it was a hot topic. So I was kind of like,
absolutely.
I was a little worried about it. And of course, with any budget cut, whenever you're talking about anything going into 6 figures, you got to worry. Is this going to become a problem? But by listening to what you're saying, it seems like this has, in a sense, gone. Probably, let's just be realistic, it's probably just moved to another state. I have noticed that puppy mills and a lot of things, they have exited Missouri, but they've moved, in a sense, to bordering states. You'll see some more of this popping up in Illinois, in Arkansas, and that's almost, in a sense, it kind of vacated and became other states' problems, unfortunately.
And brokers, there are large brokers of puppies. Some of them have very good names, and they do a good job, and some of them not so good. And so, they'll concentrate, if they got people that are pretty successful, pretty good dogs, something that they're selling and making a profit on, they're going to concentrate on an area, and they will get a lot of breeders and startups. And it's not illegal to have a dog auction in Missouri, but boy, I just don't see it like it used to be at all. And I think part of that is the whole people are a little more aware, and people are being a lot more selective when they get a puppy of knowing the history on a breeding operation in the kennel, not just going there and buying the puppy because they met the person at McDonald's because they didn't want to see their operation. Most people are even if they're not, and some breeding operations have a heightened level of biosecurity, very careful about who they allow entrance to the building. But if they don't even want you to see the building,
right,
I'd be very leery of that situation.
And that's something that we have addressed that a number of times here on the podcast with a lot of different guests, and it's nice to actually hear it come from you, considering not only are you a veterinarian who has been practicing for a long time, but you're also in Senate, and you see it from so many different areas. So that is extremely nice to hear that. Now, something that has driven me insane, to the point where I see it, and I know you've seen it as well. It's a passion project of mine, and I addressed it in a previous episode with the Missouri Alliance for Legislation, and they even said, you know what, you should really talk to, Senator Brown, which I'd always planned to talk to you. I didn't expect to do it on the podcast, but it just seemed to work out. You've seen it a lot of times where this is a weird law that I've, in a sense, have a passion to almost start a discussion on, and that is locally, I'll just use it locally because it has affected us. We have a lot of residents or even passerbys that will hit an animal, whether it's a dog or cat, with their vehicle and drive off. And we've lost over at our shop a number of them, and it hits us every time, because just because it's a dog or cat does not mean it's not a person to us. And I've always wondered, and I even looked into it, there is no law for, in a sense, a hit and run. And I've always wondered, why can't we pass a law that, or at least start the discussion to it, where if you hit a dog or cat, or even a deer, it's all the same. An animal's an animal, but, dogs or cats are predominantly more of a family member. Why is it that we don't require the driver to call either 911 and report it, or, because if they're passing by, they don't know the non-emergency number, or the non-emergency number, and say, hey, I'm on, forum, and I hit a dog, I hit a cat. The requirement is simple. They leave their name and it's been done. That way animal control can go out, or an officer can go out, and if the dog or cat is hurt enough where it could survive by going to the vet, it would save that person who the pet parent is. It would save them the grief of finding out that their dog had been hit by a car and died and suffered, literally. Because I have an example, happened a few weeks back. One of our customers came in and they told us that their dog had been hit right by Price Chopper, and the car just drove away, and the dog ended up crawling itself over onto the grass, and it suffered, unfortunately, and it hit us. It hit us terribly. And we're fostering a cat that was hit by a car. The car just drove right by. Unfortunately, the cat, it's going to survive, but it will always have paralysis. And it drives that question of, why don't we make people responsible? Let's not say we're going to throw them in jail, but if it's happened the first time, a citation happens a few times, and you have to start to wonder, is this almost a malicious thing? Do they target this? And we all know that all serial killers started with animals, and it draws that question. So I posed the question: has this been proposed, or is this something that really should be talked about, as maybe we should be thinking about this?
Yeah, and there's two sides of the issue and the argument. Some people drive off because they're scared, or I don't know all the reasons. So it's probably a good idea if we get more education, more information out there. The other side of the argument is, in some cities, if you allow that animal to roam at large, you, the owner, are the one that gets the citation. In other words, there's instances where really large dogs do damages or cause pretty severe accidents where people veer off the road or whatever. And so, as a practicing veterinarian in Rolla, Missouri, I don't see near getting hit by car animals that I saw 20 years ago, or certainly 40 years ago. People do take the responsibility of the pet much more seriously. Most of them keep them on a leash or in a fenced yard, which means that the dog could get out, and you don't want him to get hit. If he does, it would certainly be nice if someone stops and at least informs you, and yet situation where then the person that got the dog hit wants to kill the other guy, and it gets to be, and it is dealt with by the courts. But so some municipalities do have very strong ordinances and very, very expensive fines for allowing cats or dogs. And a lot of times people say, well, those ordinances don't apply to cats. Well, yes, they do. And so, and I think Rella does have some ordinances relating to leash laws. Again, laws are only as good as the money you've got to enforce.
Right.
And that gets to be an issue sometimes. If you know, police are very, very busy, and safety and public safety, and sometimes they don't. I mean, I've done a lot of late nights, gone over and picked up an animal that's been hit, and we don't know who it belongs to, and you're keeping the animal going until you hopefully you can find the owner or someone, or if it becomes an irreversible situation, then you know, at that point the city kind of takes ownership, and we do what we got to do. And I've had situations where 2 weeks later we find out who the owner was, and fortunately I've generated a record and I can answer the questions as to, you know, why did you put it down, and why did you do this, and you know, they're usually very willing to step in and help with the bill and some of the things that occur in arriving at a diagnosis that we can fix this or we can't fix this, and you know, maybe it's banged up, bruised up, matter of time, and we're good. But yeah, there's arguments both sides of that issue. There are some laws, and there's a lot of local laws that really supersede. You know, St. Louis has city of St. Louis and St. Louis County has very, very strict leash laws and not allowing pets to roam. But yet you see these reports where there are dogs on the street, and there was actually a kid killed on a playground about 2 or 3 years ago from some dogs that had just kind of reverted back to wild, that was living in and around some of those abandoned buildings in downtown St. Louis. And you know, it's kind of scary. I mean, it can get pretty darn dicey. So how to word and craft those laws that don't punish the wrong people sometimes gets to be a tremendous difficulty, because you've got both sides of that issue to look at. Number one, why there's a dog out in the street? Maybe there's a good explanation. Maybe you don't care. And number two, why the person hit it that didn't report it, or at least let someone know something's going on. And so that's a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like legislating morality is difficult, even though we do it every day. I think a lot of it has to do with education and people realizing that, you know, there's someone's pet, and you certainly didn't hit it on purpose. I would say 99% of the time it's not on purpose. There may at times be done on purpose, but man, those are, you can understand, that gets to be tough. When I was Dan Brown, the senator, trying to make a law that says that people have got to do this, or, you know, and you always have the option of a civil suit in civil court, damages in that kind of a situation, but even that gets pretty tough and pretty expensive for people to pursue that option.
It does. I've been looking at this, thinking to myself, it's something that really does require discussion. I mean, is it possible to put in the law? I don't know. And that's why I was like, you know what? I had planned to talk with you about this. It's just not
and it's a tough discussion, and I hope don't appear to be ducking it.
No.
But I tell you, one of the stronger arguments I hear is and you know, this gets pretty dicey, is you know, there are a lot of people that push we as veterinarians be required to report to law enforcement. And, you know, that's a tough one. And I view my role as a veterinarian not only as a person that deals with prevention of disease and things that we can prevent and treatment of situations that occur that try to, you know, make that individual's life better. But also, when I'm in the exam room, I'm also a teacher for someone that may be a new pet owner or someone that just from what you're seeing don't have a very good handle on what the hell they're doing. And so it's my job to try to educate them and get them up to speed on what expectations of society are if you take on that responsibility of pet ownership. And yet I don't want to make it so onerous and so tough that they can't even enjoy the pet. I see that happen at times too, where someone has read every book that's ever been printed and they've been on the internet. They're to the point of almost being miserable trying to raise this pet. And I tell them, you know, this is not supposed to be hard. This is supposed to be kind of a fun family enrichment thing. So don't make it so difficult. But then there's some that do need a wake-up call, and that's part of my job.
I completely agree. I mean, again, you kind of know what we do, and we see it from all kinds of different areas, and it is a challenge. I do see the exact thing where you do see the overzealous pet parent, and then you see the ones, and I hear about it right here through the Raw Animal Shelter of the neglect. You got both sides of it, and that's kind of in a sense, I hear it, I see different things and hear different things locally, and I know you do too. It's hard to pick and choose how this should work, and obviously you've got, you know, we have inclement weather. You know, there's ways of taking care of your pet and not leave them out in the ice cold weather. I have actually personally seen that improve. I know you've definitely seen it, but over the last 7 years, I have seen where it was the dead of winter and we have ice and snow and there's dogs outside in improper housing. I don't see that anymore. But
no, I think that education has really helped.
It has, and I've seen that. I have seen that. Now, in our last couple of things I want to go on, because I have actually kept you longer than I thought I was actually going to have you on, and I'm enjoying every minute of it, so I hope I'm not taking too much of your time.
No, that's fine.
But what are your goals of 2017 as senator?
Okay. I'm chairman of Appropriations, which in the Senate is a committee that finalizes the budget. The governor makes his recommendations. Then the House looks at the budget, and sometimes we stay pretty close to the governor's rec. Sometimes we don't. The governor's a new governor, and the budget is much more complicated sometimes than people from the outside expect. When they get there, but we try to work really hard with people in the governor's office if we see an issue or a problem that we may do a little switching around of money, or if our revenues are trending well, the governor gives his budget very early, and we get it around the 1st of May. And then we send it back to the governor with our recommendations, and we actually write the budget. The governor makes his recs, but we are actually the appropriators of the money of the taxpayers of the state of Missouri. So I'm chairman of that committee. That's taken a lot of my time this session. It's very busy. We spend a lot of time in that committee, and I'm not carrying as much legislation as I have in the past, but that is a big part of my job, and particularly when the governor has cut. The department make their requests in October of 16 for the 18 budget. So that's the numbers that we're working from and looking at. So sometimes when there's a, quote, cut, it's not really a cut. It's lesser amount than what the department wanted. So now the Department of Ag did get cut. They got cut, the director's office, quite a bit. A lot of those cuts that you may see, for instance, our example that we talked about sometimes those may have been department asks, but we're never in the budget, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so they won't really cut. And I just had a couple. I'm running my grandkids out. And sorry about that. My little guy don't like the grandkids coming back picking up their pets to go home. Anyway, so sometimes when it is, in the press or listed as a cut, it may have not been actual dollars that got removed from the program. Now, I'll have to look a little more closely on the kennel program to see if that was a departmental request or if that was an actual cut of money that was there. In other words, I'll keep an eye on that pretty closely. We're not going to let them hurt because I watch the Division of Animal Health a little closer than some senators do, and make sure that I put a fair amount of money in their budget to allow them to do their job.
Right.
So that's one of the important things that I do at the Capitol, and a lot of times late night at home. And I did carry the right to work legislation that just passed, and the governor signed into law this past week. I have a couple of things. I got a bill related to veterinary medicine, and in the past, your opportunity to sue for malpractice or complaints in human medicine is 2 years, and veterinary medicine it's 7. We're trying to get some parity there because we do have medical malpractice insurance. Mm-hmm. Like the doctors, it's not as expensive, but when the actuaries see that we're on the hook for 7 years and the MDs in Missouri on the hook for 2 years, it gets to be an issue that can be quite a cost driver. And most veterinarians that I know are more interested in, we're not the great businessmen of the world. We're more concerned about pets and owners and working with them and getting the best treatment possible for our patients. And we're not too worried about retiring multimillionaires, which I've never met one yet that did that. Yeah. But so yeah, it's busy for me. We meet with a lot of people that are very unhappy with some of their cuts, and we try to work through those and get some compromises. It's a little more agreeable for everyone, and work with the governor's office that, hey, we're not blowing your budget up. We're trying to help the budget, and sometimes he agrees, sometimes he doesn't, and we try to go on from there.
Well, you seem like you've got it all handled, and honestly, even before I started this, I had faith in you, and I didn't think anything negative. If anybody out there, and obviously we're going to be, this is going to be heard a lot by local. I'm sure that you will have nobody who is already thinking negatively as it was, but now you put everything to rest.
I hope so, and then it's been directly from the heart. I don't try to tell anybody a falsehood because I wouldn't be smart enough to keep those straight. I'm a pretty straight shooting guy. That's my character at the Capitol. I'll tell you the way it is, and not lead you astray or run you around in a circle. If I'm doing that, I don't mean to be. And if I don't know, I will tell you I don't know. If you bring the pet in, and I tell all of my younger veterinarians that do some, a little training here and hang around, and some of them go to workforce, and some of them go to other practices. But I was telling them the hardest thing in the world as a veterinarian and a new veterinarian is to tell someone I do not know.
Right.
And there's a lot of times, even after 40 years, there's times I do not know. But I do have a really good idea on how to proceed to find out. And that honesty of character and integrity is what you live or die by. And so hopefully when it's my time, somebody says he was an honest man with good integrity. That's what I worked for about 66 and a half years now.
Well, from everything I've heard about you, you have fulfilled that and then some. It has been a pleasure, Doctor and Senator. I don't think I've actually ever been able to say that in the same sentence before. It has been a pleasure, as always. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for doing this.
Hey, it's been really fun. I think you guys are trying to do the right thing. I think this is great. And at some point, if you get some questions or feedback, and I need to come back and answer some things, and somebody may totally disagree with me, and I'll try to explain where I'm coming from or whatever. So if that needs to happen, let me know. And just everyone. Take care of the creatures. Our creatures, I'm a religious guy, and I do believe that we're going to have some dogs in heaven. It wouldn't be heaven without it. So
right.
I'm hoping to meet some of my old pets.
And you're always welcome to. You know how to reach me. You know where I'm at all times. If you needed my number, well, you've got that, and and of course you have me in your system at the actual clinic. So anytime you want to come back, feel free. You are always welcome.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
But it's a great afternoon. Thank you.
It has.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you again, Senator Dan Brown, for being on the podcast. And thank you very much for all of your work, whether it's here in Phelps County or throughout Missouri. And in closing, I would also like to thank all of you who came out and supported the Phelps County Animal Welfare League's annual Spay Getty Dinner. This event will help PCAL raise the money that they desperately need to keep their spay and neuter program alive. If it wasn't for PCAL, Sarah and I couldn't do the rescues that we do. They have helped with the spay or neutering of so many of our little furry friends that we have been able to rescue. If it wasn't for PCAL and their tireless efforts, I don't think we would be able to do what we do. So thank you to all of you for helping making this a success. Well, I'm off to help at the Spay Getty Dinner, so I hope you guys all have a pet-tastic week, and Sarah will be returning behind the mic with me next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, gotta go in my bedtime. Wait, you forgot about me. And now a moment with Claire.
Second to last basketball game of the season. Tell me all about the game.
It was actually almost good.
It was actually really good. That you did a great job. You did great.
But the refs were actually making a mistake, actually.
Agreed.
Yeah, there was people doing jumbo balls. Like, they were grabbing the ball when other people was about to shoot, and they called the other team when our team actually had the ball, and they called it for blue.
That's true. Let me decipher what you just said. What you're saying is that it was a jump ball. You had hands on the ball, and the other team had a hand on the ball. And they did give the other team the ball a couple times, and it should have been to you guys.
Yeah.
That was rough. That was rough to watch that.
And then the blue team had the ball, and then our team actually I did that to my player, and then they called our team to throw the ball in.
It was... What they're saying is that you fouled one of the players and awarded the other team 2 free throws. But from my angle, your hands did not slap her hands. Now, I know I'm going to come across biased, but I did see that game, and I was watching the same game, and I was like, no, I didn't think you actually fouled her, but okay.
Yeah, I was actually guarding her, and then I got the hands on the ball. I wasn't actually getting the ball, but I was trying to block her to get the ball, and then she throwed it, then I just got the ball,
right.
And then the refs called it as a foul.
Yeah, it was rough, and you in the last quarter set the entire quarter while the coach's daughter got to play. That was an unfair move again by this coach.
It's not fair.
Well, you tell them what you told me.
I told you that I should not be out for 2 quarters. All of us should be in for that. All of us should be out for 1 quarter. Actually.
Right. Well, you set out 2, where I felt that other ones only set out 1. It felt
Everyone
like...
else sat on 1.
Right. You were the only one who actually set 2, and I felt that was, again, unfair by this coach. Promise you this, now that I'm actually going to be putting this on record, I will never sit on the sideline again. I will coach every time.
Even if it's softball.
I don't care what sport, I will coach it.
Even if it's football. Yeah.
You're not playing football. All right, well, say goodbye.
Goodbye. And this was A Moment with Claire.